start just by thanking Joanna, Julia, Johanna, and Haley for making this possible. And I want to thank Susan Adams. Do you all know that this is her painting?
I was right.
I wish I'd thought of this a long time ago when our first book came out, but this is a Castine artist, Castine writer, and if there are more books to come, I hope we can keep this going. I just love that painting. It's perfect for the title, etc. So, here are a few of the people, places, and things you will find in the land between the rivers. Wardwell Point Road, Merlin, my father, Robert Colby Nelson, Thoreau, Mr. Walker, the Grand Shaman, Van Morrison, John McPhee, Ariel Nelson, Tom Beale, Yevgeny Yevtushenko, Mark Twain, Huck Finn, London, various classic rock albums and musicians, mostly guitarists, rivers, Saco, Bagaduce, Penobscot, Tigris, Euphrates, Thames, Ness, Robert Frost, various owls, David Smith, Clark Fitzgerald, Mr. Katz, over 65 poets and poems, my stiletto knife, A. Milne and Heffalumps, Spencer Colby, the Oxcart Man, Inverness, Robert McFarlane, Grandfather Rutherford, Tom Hanks, Freya June, Hilary Nelson, our Peugeot 404, Paul Manning, Donater Castle, Spencer Nelson, my 15 dogs, and Leslie Nelson, and typewriters. Here are a few of the 65 opening sentences that will begin your reader-writer relationship. I'm having a conversation with an old pasture gate. I hear songbirds. It sounded like thunder, the percussive strokes my father made on his manual Royal typewriter. Mr. Walker, my 12th grade English teacher, was known for his devotion to Henry David Thoreau. You see, even if you don't like to write, you have a handy topic, writer's block itself. Tonight I will be on a plane to Glasgow, the city of my ancestors. Tom could see a world in a grain of sand. My father, Robert Colby Nelson, could hold a conversation with anyone. Every so often, it's good to let yourself drift, to just follow the current and see where it takes you, to leave an hour, a morning, a day, unplanned, to enter open space and time and invite its effects. I was at Outward Bound in Scotland, age 14, when I learned to use an orienteering compass. When I sign my name on a note, a letter, a legal document, I insist on using a certain pen. The best part of going out to eat once more, said my friend David Smith, was just being among fellow diners. One thing just led to another after Liddy Fitzgerald visited school on Monday with a box of her husband Clark's miniature sculptures. For me, it begins with a map. The annual count of local heffalumps is made more difficult when there is no snow on the ground. Now, as I was young and easy, my childhood was ruined by beautiful writing and high-minded values and verbal expression, and I blame it all on poetry. We used to come from Moose River. I'm fond of saying. We're away for a few generations, and now we're back. Knives were an early fascination, a rite of passage. We Americans are typically only a couple of generations away from a family farm. Kerplink, kerplank, kerplunk. You know what I'm talking about. John Keats never rambled on Mount Wallamatogus in Penobscot, Maine, a mound of scuffed granite that slopes down to the northern bay of the Bagaduce River. I am in Inverness. Love is in the air. My dad was not a car guy. Surely there is a clothesline equinox, the boundary line between indoor and outdoor laundry drying, when an ecstatic bloom of myriad garments takes place in the local dooryards. I will arise and go now to the house of summer. Those are my first sentences. Where to begin? I'm going to cheat a little and begin with this photo and an essay from Cold Spell, because I think it inaugurates a way of seeing and thinking, and I can't resist with an audience of Castine people who know this building and my chance to influence the way you look at any building in town as you walk around. Photo days. The sunlight in the old photo looks as it does today on an early autumn afternoon. The facade of the white clapboard school shines, and the shadows cling to the posed figures, the shade line close to where we would see it now, more than 150 years later. There's even a familiar casualness and relaxed demeanor to this group of teachers and students gathered in Castine for the Adams School photo circa 1875. The two boys in the third floor window project a surprisingly jaunty posture, although it must have been a little harrowing perching way up there. I've stood in that window. Perhaps they were assigned the task of ringing the bell in the cupola, the same bell that we still ring on the first and the last days of school. And that shadowy man in the stovepipe hat, who was he? The principal? How stiff and dour. As all school photo day comes around again, I'm looking at this gilt-framed photograph that hangs in the front hall of the Adams School, a gift of Marjorie Reed, of which I'm the current principal. I like to imagine that it was taken on photo day, and that the Adams core has been herded to the front steps and windows and doors to stand still, smile, and peer into the camera and the future. They seem somewhat less practiced at taking part in group photos. It must have been a rare occasion. Little did they know they were gazing at us. Today, the wide-brimmed felt hats on the boys and the stovepipe hats on the men would be replaced by baseball caps. Today, we don't see many dresses and petticoats, vests, long suit coats, and ties during school hours either. Fashion changes. Yet, today's students and teachers probably have much in common with those in 1875. We live on their land, in their houses, and attend their school as the heirs and stewards of this place. Too bad we weren't able to see them in their Halloween costumes. I wonder, what were the hot-button town issues of the day? Parking downtown, as it is now? Or perhaps horse manure, the price of fuel, No, that was the era of schooners and main-built downeasters. Who did they vote for? Ulysses Grant in 1872? Rutherford Hayes in 1876? I wonder if any of the adults in the old photo actually heard Lincoln's voice at Gettysburg. Certainly they were all present at the dedication of the Civil War monument on the Common, just across from the school. It's tempting to want to peer beyond the frame of the old photo, to see the neighboring houses, the schoolyard, or the interior of the old building that feels so familiar to us. Adams School has been in continuous operation since 1854. Old photos convey a rich sense of place, of a certain consciousness of one's sense of self, and of one's relationship to the immediate group, to time, and most important, to community. But we tend to forget the future community at whom we gaze in the casual immediacy of our present sense of frame. Actually, history is our frame, and it's interesting to peer around its edges. Tomorrow, we will herd the current group of teachers and students onto the same steps. In some latter-day Castine, the future town will inspect us, our shade, our nonchalance, our coats and ties and hats. However, they won't see boys in the attic window. Who were they, they'll wonder, looking at 54 students and their teachers way back then? What were they like? They'll ask as they review the old yearbooks or wonder at the old town reports and a school and town budget that seems a pittance by their contemporary standards. What was that young boy in the front row thinking as he mugged for the camera? And what was the girl in the second row whispering to her neighbor? Why is that kid holding a giant zucchini? In photos of the whole student body, always a shy girl, a brash boy, a distracting errant curl, an untimely gust, a nudge, a comment just too good to wait. Smile, cheese, click, frame. Those residents of the future will live on our land, in our houses, and attend our school as the heirs and stewards of this place and this sunlight. Too bad they won't be able to see us in our Halloween costumes, nor we see theirs. Things change, and nothing changes. The light will presumably feel different, feel familiar, and I hope the same bell will ring in the cupola, the same bell that rang in 1875. Now we're into the land between the rivers. The gate. I'm having a conversation with an old pasture gate. It's become my custom to take a walk down our dirt road each morning before the sun gets too high on all but the most inhospitable weather days. The dogs, Betty and Lola, badger me until I put on my socks and shoes and select a hat, then we're off. They have their points of olfactory interest all along the verge of the road, checking on the night's wild things, and the messages left by the other neighborhood dogs. And I enjoy inspecting the fields of the old saltwater farms being kept open by annual mowing. Though the farm fields are intact, their cow, horse, or sheep occupants are long gone. Some land is committed to a conservation trust. There are a few barns remaining where they must have sheltered. My front field is the remainder of Kendall Ellis's cow pasture. He was the last farmer. The barn has been converted to a human dwelling. The surrounding fields are kept open. The forest, no doubt, wants them back, alder and poplar leering at the open ground awaiting their chance at restoring their wooded glory days. One neighbor hasn't mowed their field in a few years, and the re-invasion is obvious. Most of New England is like that. There are a few old family cemeteries along the road full of familiar local names. They've been invaded by the trees, and the headstones naming the old farm families are toppled or askew. The most recent additions were made in the 1940s. No one living on the road now bears these names, though our road does. Toward the end of my stroll, a couple of gates greet me like stoic sentinels of access to the old pastures. A couple of old farming implements rusting within, a manure spreader, harrow, and hay baler. There are bluebird houses on fence posts and an island of milkweed carefully isolated by mowing. Interspecies gestures of care. A few years back there were still sheep grazing. I miss them. The field needs ruminants. So when I see the gates each day, I provide the rumination. Would the sheep have considered themselves fenced in? Would I be fenced out to them? The white wooden gate and fence posts are my standard against which to measure the day's weather. Cloud cover, fog, sunshine, or gloom, the gates stand stolidly open, attendant, a color scale. Like frost's mending wall, they start my daily conversation with the bird calls I'm learning to identify, and the shy does and fawns that seem to hide and wait for my arrival. Often in early summer, there were newborns nesting in the tall grass or lupins nearby. Today the gray catbird performed its aria. Last week the bobolink. I might even hear a distant loon out on the river at the bottom of the field. And for how many generations have these birds nested at this very spot? Did the catbird of 1870 sing the same song as today? My little dog must think it weird to stop without any other dwellings near and snap a daily photo for the rest of our far-flung family to check in on the Maine coastal forecast. Today's caption, glorious again, as I look down the pasture to the oak-rimmed river beyond. Other days it could be cloud cover like the British Isles, or simply dreich. There's no bad weather, only inappropriate clothing, as the Scottish adage goes, always suitable for dreich. It is my neighbor's gate, his land posted. Hunters are not welcome, and I trespass only with my attention-hunting footprints. There is a back path from my house to an interior field which I sometimes follow to enjoy the forest solitude. Just me and the hermit thrushes, or an occasional startled deer when I manage to approach downwind and our trails intersect. The forest buffers the old cow pasture and the back hayfield. This summer there might be 2 mowings. I return to the gate. It is a portal to the past use of the land, through which I imagine a farmer trudging through with a scythe, or a son or daughter herding the cows back to the barn for another milking. Despite the new modern houses on the road, we still inhabit this former antique landscape, if not its former use. And a portal to imagination. It is a graphic invitation for sketching or printmaking, and might show up in an illustration by my daughter, the recipient of my daily photos, herding images and sketches through the gates, and the last sentence before I turn and head for home. This is called Flight Aware. I hear songbirds, but which ones? Overhead, jetliners streak to and from Europe. From which countries? Going to which cities? Both flights are reconnoitering on my smartphone as I walk. My two favorite apps hear the birds and see airplanes and will answer my questions identifying both. Much better than the myriad apps that just beguile me with mindless strolling through a parallel, frivolous, virtual universe. I prefer these connections to the real songs and flights going on in my immediate surroundings. No scrolling required. I open the Merlin app, my favorite, and what a perfect double entendre. It is indeed a wizard. It listens to the woodland airwaves and records and identifies even the subtlest tweet, turning the songlines of myriad bird species into a chart of sonic peaks and valleys. It detects more birds than my ears do. The finches alone are astounding. The gray catbird was a revelation. Ovenbirds, red-winged blackbirds, northern goshawks, owls, and vireos galore, plus a myriad of warblers, sparrows, and thrushes, my favorites, inhabit my road. Eastern bluebirds, I await discovery of an actual Merlin. Then I open FlightAware, the Merlin of air traffic tracking. As jet contrails skein the stratosphere, their sonic trails lagging behind, I touch the winged icon on my phone's screen. Flight paths turn into flight plans with departure and arrival times, destinations, altitude, and airspeed. FlightAware tells me what's flying overhead in real time anywhere in the world. The song of a Boeing 747 battling headwinds from Paris to New York is no great listening joy, but I like seeing the great migratory arcs across our skies. There's a romance to imagining hundreds of passengers admiring the view of Mount Katahdin from 30,000 feet, or wondering at Down East Maine's jigsaw coastline. I also hear the variety of languages and accents being spoken above as the flight crew prepares everyone for landing, customs, and immigration. Please remain in your seats with the seat belt fastened low and tight across your lap. Won't be long now. Having left Europe at noon, they could well be landing at noon thanks to the magic of longitudinal time creep, the Earth's rotation, and prevailing easterly winds. They are but white lines behind a silver swallow, barely visible, scribing circumpolar routes in 3 dimensions across the sky and 2 dimensions on my phone, streaming over the maritime provinces, down the Bay of Fundy, over Bangor and my coastline, or diverging slightly, vectored for a city farther west. They are a flight number, a departure time, an airspeed, and altitude. Who are the Icelandic air passengers who left Reykjavik this morning and will spend the night in New York? Or Zurich to JFK, 2 heavy planes flying like geese, one at the front of the V formation, one slipstreaming. There's London to Tampa, Frankfurt to Greenville, South Carolina, Copenhagen to Boston, Chicago to Addis Ababa is a comparatively exotic and long flight joining the flow from the west. The world flocks above Maine every day. Our green and pleasant forests and mountains are the welcome landfall of American airspace for passengers from Heathrow to Dulles. I have been on that plane. My nest is below. I can see my house from my perch up here. By late afternoon and evening, the Europe-bound flights from East Coast airports begin. Vesper flights heading for the chaotic murmuration of Boeings and Airbuses over European airspace like starlings. These passengers will land in all the hubs of Europe, according to my app, jet-lagged and ready for breakfast and a nap. They'll be home or starting a fresh sojourn. I have flown on those planes too. Birds enjoy a pilot's eye view and similar navigational aids, follow similar flight corridors returning to their summer haunts from South American summer haunts. Some glide through Maine on their way farther north, like their human flyers, final destinations several airports distant. I like a rendezvous for morning and evening songs and even detect differences in the bird species perched in my oaks and firs versus the meadow dwellers down the road. They are site-specific, according to Merlin, each with a local niche to fill with song. I would join the avian red-eye, below the jets but still soaring. Sure, I might ride the jet streams for a long-haul route, but I'd also swoop down and inspect my overflight terroir from treetop altitude, like the recent evening grosbeaks that pillaged my feeder for breakfast, and a weather respite on some grand tour. They were way off course, and did not speak chickadee or crow, nor request landing permission. They gorged, then departed to their sky blue highway as quickly as they had arrived, refueled, but not before being identified with my bird flight aware. I hope they landed safely, but where? Reykjavik, perhaps? What's for breakfast, I wonder? Sometimes life imitates an M.C. Escher drawing. This is called How Poetry Ruined My Life. And long ago after I wrote it, and it was a lot of fun to write, I sent it off to English Journal, which is the publication of the Association of Professional English Teachers. I thought, they are going to get such a kick out of this. They will laugh. Well, it was submitted to a 3-jury reading panel, so 3 different English teachers read it, and they rejected it. And I was really disappointed. And the comment back was, there's no lesson plan here.
Oh, lesson plan.
So, okay. Right. There is no lesson plan. How poetry ruined my life. Now, as I was young and easy, my childhood was ruined by beautiful writing and high-minded values and verbal expression, and I blame it all on poetry. For years, my parents left this dangerous, unstable writing lying around the house in plain sight. It was, alas, the era before parent advisory labels. Mom and Dad left poems where unsuspecting children could find them. For birthday cards, there were poetic quotes. For the solution to every torment, from mere doldrums of summer to heartbreak and adolescent angst, there were quotes from poems. My early years were imbued with the sense that language is the most precious thing in the world, that putting the right words in the right order was a virtuous life work, that finding power and style and beauty in language was the highest calling, all telegraphed to us kids by poems taped on the fridge and liberal quoting of verse. Poetry, it was clear, was the fount of wisdom, insight, and memorable, gorgeous expression. Even today, when I pluck a few cherished anthologies from my shelf, it starts a flood of memory and feeling. deeply embedded lines come to the fore like old acquaintances. I still have the leaves of grass that Dad gave me for Christmas in 9th grade. Quote, Whitman loved much that you love, beauty, openness, honesty, freedom, nature. Inside here is his song of the open road. You are entering your open road years. Demand much of them. Give them fully of yourself, and you will have come to terms with being. Dad felt obliged to convey pathos and meaning at every opportunity. How about a new bicycle for Christmas? Nope. But I bet I can now find a poem about it. By 12th grade, I only wanted one thing for Christmas. The complete poems of E. E. Cummings. Powerful words and emotions had infected my soul. My paperback copy of Oscar Williams' Pocket Book of Modern Verse was a constant companion for 2 years of high school English. It's here on my shelf. Mr. Walker gave excruciatingly precise tests of memory based on that book. I still recall hours of poring over titles and poets, ready to identify any snippet of verse for tests covering 40 poems. The power of the poems, the power of recollecting them. Phrases from Walker poems still come to mind. A poem should not mean but be. Imaginary gardens with real toads in them. Had anything been wrong, we would certainly have heard. There, I've shared a poetry scavenger hunt. Try taking a walk in the woods without Wordsworth or Frost accompanying you. The woods are always lovely, dark, and deep. Ooh, that comma. Try taking in a winter landscape without hearing in the sound of the wind the nothing that is not there and the nothing that is. There's always a certain slant of light that must be appreciated or described. It makes the world a wordscape, ripe for shaping and appreciation beyond the prosaic. Inside the tent of poetry, metaphor alert, I found a world of imagination. 'Twas brillig, nature's beauty, my senior yearbook quote. Give me the spark of nature's fire, that's all the learning I desire. And even environmentalism. There's only a little planet, but oh how beautiful it is. Poetry had an answer for everything and beckoned to a hell of a good universe next door. Let's go. It gauged human psyche and history and potential all in cadence and rhyme. We fray into the future, rarely wrought save in the tapestries of afterthought. The pernicious influence of an even greater range of poets was cemented in place in college. I was an English major. I read the Old and Middle English, Shakespearean, Romantic, Victorian, and Modern English, Modern British, and American poets before settling on T.S. Eliot for my thesis topic. Senior year was 4 quartets. And what does one do with a BA in English? Teach poetry, of course, so I did. Misery. Now my bookshelves groan with anthologies of all kinds. I can locate a poem on any theme, from running to golf to automobiles, guitar riffs to swimming lessons, geometry to thermodynamics, ants to Zulus. Nothing exceeds the grasp of the poetic imagination. Everything good, lasting, meaningful can be found in a poem. In my professional life, I once had the privilege of interviewing Billy Collins, U.S. Poet Laureate. Poetry is the result, he said, of taking an obsessive interest in language and finding that using language in a certain way can express what otherwise cannot be expressed. The history of poetry is the only surviving history we have of human emotion. It's the history of the human heart. There is no other one. Without poetry, we would be deprived of the emotional companionship of our ancestors. No pressure, Billy. There is now no walk for me that is not Thoreauvian, no day not filled with metaphor, no moment not experienced metaphysically or transcendentally. Beauty and truth, truth, beauty, everywhere. I cannot see a certain slant of light or hear the winter wind without hearing the nothing that is not there and the nothing that is. The world is words. The little lame balloon man orders spring for me. The poet is the priest of the invisible, or an alien from inner space. Poetry is the bill and coo of sex, saith the poet. Erotica. It is a burden to be so dominated by great writing. Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be English majors, though they will come to terms with being, like that'll pay the bills. My kids have been affected too, receiving poems as birthday letters or sundry quote barrages. Happy birthday, honey. Have I sent you this one by Wendell Berry recently? William Stafford, Sharon Olds, Naomi Shihab Nye. The word, the word, the word. Always got a quote. Share something pithy and succinct, passing along meaning and feeling and beautiful expression in other people's words. It's not enough to merely state a point. It must always have maximum possible resonance. Emotional companionship indeed. Yup, poetry made me the pitiful, empathic, romantic, Keatsian, truth-seeking, beauty-seeking, beatnik, transcendental, articulate man I am today. Such as I was, such as I would become. Horsemen pass by. Well, we won't be reading that in 12th grade English this year, I'll tell you. It's 8:48. I'm going to read one more, and then if anybody wants, and it's shorter than that last one. And this is the title essay that comes last in The Land Between the Rivers. And I think it kind of wraps together some of the themes of the prior reading. I will arise and go now to the house of summer. It is the first day warm enough to keep the windows open at night. The outside is coming back inside with bird song and howls. The owls have been there all the time, of course, but I have not heard them coming out at dusk. The rains have soaked the roof of the forest, but the sound of droplets on their way through the leaves to the floor is inaudible. The moon comes and goes without comment, but now outside air is inside. The summer house is open. We've spent so long sheltering, holding cold and frozen precipitation at bay, watching the log pile dwindle. Now we can yield. Even the fog here on the Maine coast can seep in and find welcome. We exhale our winter selves and inhale our summer selves. It's changeover day, as when one summer tenant departs and the next one arrives. The house is swept of winter sounds. The sheets are hung in the line to refresh in the sun, and the hermit thrush and vireo filter past open windows and through the screens to delight us. They are back. Our summer selves are back. It sends me on a pilgrimage to the summer house in the Saco River Valley, the house with the orange canoe, inhaling the morning and evening bird songs, the mountain water running over pebbled streams, the maple forests, the distant freight train's wheel coming down the valley from Crawford Notch, the headwaters of our river, of our summer, then and always. We would arrive after a long drive with boats and duffel bags on the roof of the station wagon and run first to check the water level in the river channel after the spring runoff. Then we fling wide the windows to air out the winter doldrums. The stairs creak, untrodden since last August. The windowsills are dusty and fly littered. The driftwood and pebble collections of previous summers have been there sunning all winter, along with a few eagle feathers and birch bark. Let new collections begin. Driftwood mobiles, jars of new pebbles, pressed flowers, but first the air exchange, the season exchange. Let summer in. The deck was like the prow of a ship looming over the riverbank. The spinnaker of summer billowed before us, pulling us on, weigh anchor. My bed was at the top of the A-frame, a bunk bed in the crow's nest, where I spent mornings languishing with a book before descending the steep boat ladder to begin my explorations of the woods and riverbank. There are new trees across the branch stream. The spring ice has gouged new divots in our landing. The sandy cove is migrating downstream. The river tells us the story of winter while we were away. Memory is a trout holding steady midstream. It awaits food, inspects floating possibilities, then rising to a wriggling fly, leaps and swallows and finds itself wriggling on a hook. The adults were moving around outside my field of vision. The summer beckoned to the children in a different manner. But now that I am an adult, I ponder the moments of transition and transfer, from season to season, from work to play and leisure, from effort to languor, the need to be doing to the effortless, floating need to be doing nothing, to be heedless. There was the quality of light, hot intensity out on the water versus the dappled greenness of the cool woods, or the water snorkeling above the riverbed, submerging in the thermoclines or trying to grab the wary trout. We held our breath as long as it took to swim down and move a big boulder, divert the stream, and make a pool. At night the river lulled us, murmuring, unlike the restless ocean. Without TV, we read or were read to, and heard foreign radio stations careening off the ionosphere. The mosquitoes whined for entry at the screens. Moths flitted at the outside light bulb. Crickets and tree frogs chorused. Dylan Thomas called it holy darkness. We lit the fireplace in July. I can't remember deeper slumbers. My favorite summer was 1969, the summer of Woodstock and driftwood mobiles. I emulated Calder with foraged materials. Using Dad's power drill and copper wire, I made elaborate aerial ballets with ice-polished sticks and weathered boards washed up by the river. Detritus turns to art. The A-frame was always the place of first experiences. Swimming in fast water, hiking in the White Mountains, being alone. Early romances that would echo through the rest of my life, and listening to the song of the mountain watershed. I still reside in June 1974, after high school graduation, spending a week there with a buddy, decompressing. 2 massive oaks had bridged the stream that spring. I could tightrope in my bare feet over the current and peer straight down above big trout. The memory persists. They levitated languidly midstream, awaiting temptations, floating past on the stream's surface, bugs, mayflies, ants, and perhaps my inartfully presented dry fly. I could not interest him, though. I flogged the stream until dusk. Catching one didn't matter. I can watch forever from my mental perch, lulled by the current through time and the trout that can't be landed, waving like a memory just out of reach. And each summer had a tipping point, the moment when you realize you're closer to departure than to arrival. It becomes a melancholy countdown. The light is changing. August air hints of autumn, dread winter. Soon the house of winter will return. Time to close up. What's inside, new memories, migrates out and away with us, back down the dirt road until next year. Summer is a trove of fables, of sojourns by which we measure ourselves. It is the magical place, or magical time, the other river, skirting the happy isle of summer, filling a real place and my reinvention of it from downstream that I'm collecting. Dipping my toes in one current tests the power of the other. As with any hallowed memory, as I sit astride the runoff toppled trees, the summer sun always warms. The cold, cold current bearing us downstream always stabs at my heart. Aren't we there? The light is changing. It's a tipping point. I don't know how many of you are migrating soon. But there's an essay I wrote, I won't read it now, but called The Migration, which is the memory of putting everyone in the minivan, the dogs, the bicycles, the boats, and heading south. And we lived in Boston, so as you go south and you get down Route 95 and you cross New Hampshire and then you're in northern Massachusetts, and then there's a certain hill you come over and you see Boston, and everything slows down and the air changes and you realize that cold feeling of I'm not in the right place and time has gotten the better of me. And at least for the Nelson family, it's what turned into a migration to Maine, and we're still here. Apparently, some of you may have read some stuff I've written, and now's your chance to let me hear back. Joy?
Okay, poetry does. It brings the past and our memories here in Castine, because many of us only come in the summer, and we do have to close our houses and reopen them. But it was funny, I recognized immediately that, and Dewey, you can't even remember it, I bet you. Can you recite it? About girls dressed in yellow?
You know what it was? Is
What was it?
the essay was about the jump rope song.
The jump rope. Yeah.
Cinderella. dressed in
Cinderella.
yellow. I don't remember it.
But it was.
The kids all knew it, and as they're turning the rope to do double dutch,
Yeah.
that's
But
what
it was
they
very.
say. And then it changes
And then
into a
you-
count, so you
Right.
count the number of
Right.
jumps you can make before.
And then you talk about the cadence and 4/4 time. I mean, I remember these things. But anyway, I recognize his writing, and I still do.
You know, thank you, Joy. And I think that was my introduction to you as well.
Yeah, that was really.
What's this guy doing out of Maine? And it was Billy Collins, who I mentioned,
Uh-huh.
who pointed out that, we have a heart with 4 chambers. We're bipeds. And so iambic pentameter and 2/4 and 4/4 music comes naturally because that music is in us. And as that sense of
Good point, isn't it?
rhythm and cadence that we identify in a poem that works successfully. I have to say too that it's there are many poems in my heart that are not necessarily the instructive poems about poetry or the world or logic or great inspiration, but so many of Philip Booth's poems fill that chamber. And I would direct you to a poem called Saying It, and I would direct you to a poem called Stripped by Philip Booth. And I won't go into why they're so meaningful for me, but they are, and I think they would be meaningful for anyone.
The other poet up here who was amazing was Russell Bourne. And you all know, his family. But Russell Bourne wrote absolutely wonderfully about the summer people. And I mean, he wrote about 2 areas. He wrote about upstate New York and he wrote about here. But he's really worth reading if you love Castine.
Yeah. Well, we are all summer people, and we are all winter people. Just some of us stay here for winter.
So do you keep a list of things you want to write about? Do you have an idea on a walk? Like, I know you have a little notebook in your pocket.
Yeah,
But is that like, do you actually go back to it, or is it just an idea or a phrase or something that you capture at that moment and then write about later?
I have tried so hard to keep a journal like real writers do, and write stuff down when they come to me, and I've just never been able to sustain it. So what happens to me, and the first 2 things I read are examples of this, I'll be on a walk, and I'll see something, or I'll using the apps on my phone, FlightAware and Merlin, and suddenly I see Merlin is listening to birds, FlightAware is looking at planes, and they're the same. So we have these things flying through space, and I gotta write about that. So when I get home, I'll take it up. I really sit down to try. I'm not a writer who gets up in the morning and just waits for something to occur to me to write. I never try and write until I have something I want to say. And it's just the way I'm wired, I guess. I know there are plenty of poets, like William Stafford as an example. He would get up every morning at 4 a.m. with a blank sheet of paper. And he would just open himself to whatever was coming from wherever the words come from. And that was his writing power. I try and avoid writing poems. It's just too hard. It's like Mark Twain's comment about letters. I would have written you a short letter, but I didn't have the time. It takes a lot longer to be concise.
Yeah, that's true.
I've only lived full time in Maine for a few years, but I've heard a number of Maine poets now delivering their poems orally. And if I were to say that there's a common denominator, it's the conversational style of so many of the poets from Maine. So if I had a question, it would be, who do you imagine is your sort of ideal listener, co-conversationalist? Is it somebody who hasn't yet gone over the hill to Boston? Is it somebody who understands Maine in some way? But it seems to me that Maine poets, however they may be somewhat self-reflective, are always engaged in a kind of conversation. And I'm not entirely sure who your ideal co-conversationalist is. Do you have one? Do you imagine one?
Probably Philip Booth.
I'm sorry?
Philip Booth, probably.
Philip Booth.
Yeah. Although I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Frost talk about poetry being a conversation? And he's not a Maine poet, but there's at least one or two of his poems that just reside in me as that conversation, but it's shaped and it's honed. So conversation usually goes on too long, and most poems don't. They go on just long enough. And there should be, I think, a precision and accuracy to the poet's intention, to say what it is they need to say, that's welling up and needs expression. I tend to like poets and poems that have that conversational quality. Maybe it's a conversation with oneself, but it seems to me a lot of it begins with the conversation externally, or there's a stimulation of nature, whatever it is that catches your eye outside. The gate, the farm gate that I've walked by 100 times, or going back to where I started with the Adams School photo from 1870. And that building, we walk by it every day. How many of us think about the frame that's around that and our place in that frame, or what we learn from seeing Adams School then, Adams School now, and think about Adams School to come? It seems to me those are poetic angles of vision, and it kind of grabs me. There are 65 different poems mentioned or very subtly referred to in here. And the same is true for Cold Spell, not that many, but there. So clearly, I live in a land, the world of poetry is flat for me. There's commerce between Milton, Shakespeare, Keats, Philip Booth. It's the anybody anywhere is talking about the things that I like and love, and it creeps in, and maybe that's part of the conversation too, with the poets that have come before, the texts that have come before. Oh, Mom and Dad, jeez, just going on and on. Why not plastics? Plastics. Remember the film? Ben, I have one word to say to you. Plastics. Well, that's a Nelson family joke. It comes along with many, many other films that were part of my upbringing, and very ripe quotes. That's another discussion. Let me say one last thing. And I've put it this way for other people. The sonic background of my childhood and of our house growing up was typing. Not writing, typing. My dad was a journalist, my mom was a columnist and poet. And there were two royal typewriters in the Nelson household. It's all we heard. Plus, movie soundtracks, a lot of classical music, and eventually, at one point, the Beatles. Thank you, Jesus. But it's that I recognize it's the imprint of simply typing. What was Dad doing? What were those words and sentences about? Well, he was a journalist. He was writing a story. Can I go to typing school this summer after 7th grade? Who does that? What 7th grade boy wants to go to summer school at Weston High School to learn to type? It's just so abnormal. And then I remember this moment clearly in 8th grade, telling my mom, I have to write an essay for school tomorrow. And what should have followed was, damn it. But I said, I have to write an essay for school tomorrow. I'm going to try out my Eric Severide style.
Oh my God. Oh dear.
so the rest is history.
That was your